You're listening to English Podcast, a space created to help you grow with engaging stories and authentic conversations.
Take it easy, enjoy every episode, and improve your English with confidence.
Support us with your like and subscription. Have you ever baked bread from scratch? I mean, really from scratch, not using a bread machine. It's a completely different experience. This story is about my first attempt, and let me tell you, it was quite the adventure. It all started in my tiny apartment kitchen, which is more like a galley kitchen, long and narrow like on a ship.
I can just imagine. A galley kitchen is definitely not ideal for large culinary projects. My first attempt at making pasta was in a similar space. Flour everywhere. So, what inspired you to bake bread in such a compact space?
Well, I was reading an article about the joys of baking, how therapeutic it is. It mentioned the amazing aroma that fills your home and how satisfying it is to eat something you've created with your own hands. Therapeutic means calming and relaxing, by the way. And I thought, why not? Famous last words, right?
Oh, I totally understand that feeling. It's that irresistible urge to create something delicious and comforting. So, tell me, how did you start this therapeutic process? Did you have a recipe, or did you just wing it? Winging it means trying something without a plan.
I found a simple recipe online. It seemed straightforward enough. Flour, water, yeast, salt. How hard could it be? I gathered all my ingredients and laid them out on my small kitchen counter, carefully measuring everything. My apartment is pretty basic, nothing fancy, but it's home. The afternoon sunlight streamed in through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It felt promising.
That sounds lovely, almost idyllic. That moment before you begin, when everything is still full of potential. Did you have any prior baking experience, even something simple like cookies or muffins?
So, I carefully poured the yeast mixture into the well in the flour. It looked like a muddy little volcano. Then, slowly, I started mixing it all together with a wooden spoon. The recipe said to knead the dough for 10 minutes, but I wasn't really sure what that meant.
Kneading is like folding and pushing the dough. It's a bit like giving it a massage. It helps to make the bread nice and stretchy. Did you manage to do it? It can be quite tiring the first time.
It was hard work. My arms were aching after a few minutes. The dough was sticky and kept sticking to my hands. It was a real mess. Flour everywhere. I felt like I was wrestling with a small, floury monster.
I know that feeling. The first time I tried, I had dough up to my elbows. It's all part of the fun though. So, after the kneading, what did you do?
The recipe said to put the dough in a bowl, cover it with a cloth, and leave it in a warm place to rise. Rise means to become bigger, to expand. The yeast makes the dough puff up. I put mine in a sunny spot on the kitchen counter.
Good. Direct sunlight might be a bit too much though. A slightly warm place is ideal. Like maybe an oven that's been turned off after being slightly heated. This creates the perfect environment for the yeast to do its magic.
I didn't think of that. I just left it in the sun. Then I had to wait an hour. A whole hour. It felt like forever. I kept peeking under the cloth to see if anything was happening.
The anticipation is always the hardest part. Waiting for the dough to rise is like waiting for Christmas morning. You're so excited to see what happens. So, did your dough rise? Did it get bigger?
So, to recap what's happened so far in our story. Baking bread for the first time. Sarah, our main character, has always wanted to bake a beautiful loaf of bread, like the ones she sees in artisan bakeries. She finally decides to try, even though she's a bit intimidated. She gets a recipe from her grandmother and gathers all the ingredients.
Exactly. She's feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Trepidation is a good word for that. She starts mixing the dough, and it's a lot stickier than she expected. It gets everywhere. Flour on the counter. Dough stuck to her fingers. It's quite a messy scene. She starts to wonder if she's doing it right.
Right. A real sticky situation, literally. She perseveres, though. She keeps kneading the dough, which means working it with her hands, folding and pushing it. This develops the gluten in the flour, which is what gives the bread its structure and chewy texture.
Yes, and that kneading process is really important. The recipe says to knead for 10 minutes, which feels like forever to Sarah. Her arms start to ache, but she keeps going. She's determined to make this bread. She imagines the delicious aroma filling her kitchen.
And that brings us to where we left off. Sarah has finished kneading. Now, the dough needs to rise, or prove, as bakers sometimes call it. This is where the yeast, a tiny fungus, does its magic. It eats the sugars in the flour and releases gas, making the dough expand and become light and airy.
It's almost like the dough is alive and growing. Sarah puts the dough in a bowl, covers it with a clean cloth, and places it in a warm spot. Now she has to wait. The recipe says it should take about an hour. She's impatient, peeking under the cloth every few minutes to see if it's growing.
She's so eager to see the results of her hard work. And remember, this is her first time baking bread, so everything feels like a big deal. It's not just about following the recipe. It's about the whole experience. The anticipation, the effort, the hope for a delicious outcome. Let's see what happens next. The kitchen was absolute chaos. Flour dusted every surface like a fresh snowfall. Sticky dough clung to the countertops, the rolling pin, and even my eyebrows. It was a spectacular mess, but I felt a strange sense of accomplishment.
I can just picture it. You were covered in flour, like a baker from a cartoon. You used the word clung. There it means to stick tightly to something. The dough clung to everything. A good synonym would be adhered, but clung is more common in everyday conversation.
Exactly. And the smell, it was heavenly. The warm, yeasty aroma filled the entire house, a stark contrast to the usual scent of burnt toast I tend to produce. I had opened all the windows to try and air the place out a little, especially after the small incident with the oven mitt.
Oh dear, the oven mitt incident. We have to hear about this. But before that, you mentioned yeasty. It describes the smell or taste of yeast, which is what makes bread rise. And aroma is a pleasant smell, a more sophisticated way of saying smell. Yeasty aroma, very descriptive.
Right, the oven mitt. Well, in my haste to check on the bread, I sort of, nudged the flaming gas burner with it. Let's just say it's no longer usable. My wife was less than impressed. Stark contrast. That means a very noticeable difference, by the way.
Oh no, that sounds like quite the incident, indeed. Less than impressed is a polite way of saying she was probably quite angry. It's a useful understatement to learn.
She was. But then she tasted the bread. Her expression softened. Her eyes widened. She took another bite, and then another. The silence was broken only by the satisfying crunch of the crust. All was forgiven. The burnt oven mitt, the flour bomb explosion in the kitchen, it didn't matter. The bread was a triumph.
That's lovely. Softened here means her face relaxed, showing she wasn't angry anymore. And triumph means a great victory or achievement. Baking your first successful loaf of bread definitely feels like a triumph.
It truly did. She used a phrase I hadn't heard before. She said the bread was worth its weight in gold, meaning it was extremely valuable or precious. She even suggested I bake another loaf tomorrow.
That's high praise indeed. Worth its weight in gold is a fantastic idiom. It sounds like your baking adventure was a success, despite the mess. So, tell us, what did you learn from this experience?
Patience, mostly. Bread making is a slow process. You can't rush it. Also, a little bit of mess is inevitable. And finally, even a burnt oven mitt can't overshadow the joy of creating something delicious with your own hands.
Beautifully put. Inevitable means something that's certain to happen, unavoidable. So, the mess was unavoidable, but the delicious bread made it worthwhile.
Exactly. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have another loaf to bake tomorrow. Wish me luck, and maybe this time I'll avoid setting anything on fire.
Good luck. I'm sure it will be even better this time. And maybe invest in a new oven mitt.
Okay, let's recap the story so far. Remember, recap means to summarize. I started this whole baking adventure because I wanted fresh, homemade bread. I had this romantic idea of it, warm from the oven, that delicious aroma filling the kitchen.
And you found a recipe online, a seemingly simple one. Seemingly means it appeared simple at first glance, but might not have been in reality. You gathered your ingredients: flour, water, yeast, the essentials. You were pretty confident, weren't you?
Confident, yes. Competent, not so much. The mixing was messy, flour everywhere. The dough, instead of being smooth and elastic like in the videos, was sticky and unruly. Unruly means difficult to control. It was like a science experiment gone wrong.
Then came the proving stage. You patiently waited for the dough to rise, hoping for that doubled in size miracle. But after an hour, it looked, well, pretty much the same. You started to doubt your baking abilities, thinking maybe you weren't cut out for this.
But I persevered. Persevere means to continue even when it's difficult. I put the dough in the oven anyway, and, surprisingly, it started to bake. The kitchen filled with that amazing, yeasty smell I'd been dreaming of. It was a small victory.
The final hurdle, taking it out of the oven. The loaf was a little lopsided, perhaps a bit overdone on one side, but undeniably bread. And the taste? Well, not quite bakery worthy, but definitely edible and definitely satisfying.
It was a messy, chaotic experience, full of unexpected challenges. But the smell, the taste, even the mess, made it all worth it. It was a valuable lesson in patience, perseverance, and the simple joy of creating something with your own hands.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe next time that loaf will be perfectly symmetrical and golden brown. Practice makes perfect, right? And even if it isn't, the process itself is rewarding.
Thanks for listening to English Boost. Remember, practice a little every day and you'll see big results. See you in the next episode.